Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so as you guys know, we're currently playing the 2020 Speed Chess Championships, and it's Wesley So versus Hikaru Nakamura, and it's going on right now. I was able to grab one of the games so far from the action, and so I think they're at about game 6 in the 5 plus 1 minute portion, and there's been 2 wins so far, and this is one of the games where we had a win. And this is actually the first win. I've been like closely following the thing. Man, excuse me. Man, so at the like I said before, at the end of the video, I have the answer to the previous chess puzzle, and I have the new chess puzzle for you guys. I literally have like 6 of them set up, so that way I'm just gonna be able to try to, turn out these videos. And so if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we have for that first victory here. All right, so we have e4, e5, so knight to f3. So we got knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Roy Lopez, one of the oldest openings in the game of chess that we know of, late 1400s. And so we have knight to f6, and we have d3. And as you guys know, we're in the Berlin defense. This was the weapon that Vladimir Kramnik used against Garry Kasparov in their 2000 match. It's a tough one to crack. It's definitely very sound. So it's not like a sideline situation. So we're in some really legit waters here. And so we have bishop to c5, and we have castles. Also possible after bishop to c5 is taken on c6 with the bishop. And so after d takes c6, we'd see castles. And we would see something possibly like queen to d6, and you'd see b3. Just putting this bishop on that diagonal, trying to see if we can't snap this pawn. You might see something like bishop to d4 or knight to d7 defending that. So like I said, we do have castles, and so we have knight to d4. Attacking. Of course, you're not going to take the pawn here because you'll just be dropping the bishop. So we see a trade. So bishop takes d4, or knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, and we see c3 just knocking that bishop back. So we see bishop to b6, knight to a3. It's a pretty rare idea, knight to a3. There's about 3 or 4 other moves that are more top than this move is. So this is kind of like a little, novelty type of thing. We're not in it's been played before, so we're not in the novelty portion of a game, but it's definitely a lot rarer than some of the other main lines. So we see c6, bishop back to a4, and so we see d6, just making sure that we have everything covered. We don't have the bishop, problems here. We don't have anything taking, the e5 pawn. So everything, Wesley So is just trying to make sure that he has everything covered. And so we see bishop back to b3, and so we see a5, so knight to c4, and we have bishop to c7. Of course, this a5 move coming, at some point we're going to try to knock this bishop back because this is a very dangerous diagonal for it to be on. Most players aren't going to be comfortable with the bishop, bearing down on that tender square there. And so we see knight to e3, and it's a knight to e3 where we have a brand new game. This is the novelty of the game. It has never been seen before. I can't remember the moves, but I think there were at least 2 moves in this position that have been played before. And so knight to e3 takes us into brand new territory. It's pretty legitimate. You're trying to plot this knight on f5, see if you can't get any light square weaknesses and stuff like that. And also in this position, bishop to g5 was possible, and then after a4, bishop c2 would just come back. You're probably wanting to get rid of this knight. This knight is a very strong piece, especially in the defense of this king side over here. If you have queen movements and things like that. So like I said, we do have knight to e3, and so we see castles by black. We see queen to f3 by white. So like I said, a4 came, so we knocked that bishop back off that diagonal. So bishop to c2, we have d5. At some point, d5 is going to come. Like I always say before, guys, when you have a nice pawn center, the other player is going to try to, chip away at that as much as they can. And d5 is a really, really nice, move to do that with. So we have knight coming to f5. So bishop takes f5, queen takes f5. We see queen to d7 offering a trade of queens, and Nakamura didn't like that, so he went ahead and went queen to f3. And, you know, Wesley So saying, hey, now I want to trade queens, you know, so he goes queen to G4, trying to press the issue. It was probably a little bit better for Nakamura to actually do trade queens. It would have simplified the position pretty good. But, you know, when you keep queens on the board, usually you keep like winning possibilities on, because once you get queens off the board, you know, draws become a lot more, you know, a lot more common. So, you know, for a player that's really trying to win, it's probably not in always the best interest to trade queens here. So, and also after, you know, queen to F3, something else you could have saw would be rook F to E8. And then after bishop to G5, you'll just, you know, have like kind of like a little rook lift going on with rook to E6. That was something that was legit too. So like I said, you know, Hikaru, he didn't want to trade queens again. So he went ahead and went queen to E3. And so we have rook F to D8. And so we see H3. And we see queen to E6. And this is really good because, you know, you have situations where like when the queen is attacked, you want to try to put it on the most central square. Because, you know, of course you had D7 or D8 or G6. But queen to E6 just keeps pressure along this file and just centralize it. You know, you always want to, if you're going to make a move with your queen or you're going to retreat your queen, you want to try to put it in the most central square that you can think of. And so, you know, we have queen to G3 by Hikaru. And so we have rook to D7, and after queen to G3, you know, we also had H6 that was possible, and it might seem like it might be giving a pawn away because, you know, you have this pin on this G file, but you don't want to go for that because you'd see knight to H5, and then unfortunately the queen is hit, and you're going to be losing your bishop for a pawn, which is something you don't want to do. So like I said, we have rook to D7, we had rook to E1. So B5 coming. As you can see, you know, Wesley So's kind of killing it here on the queen side, getting, you know, a crazy amount of expansion going on. So we see bishop to G5, and we see H6, and then we see bishop to E3. And similar to what we saw a second ago, you definitely don't want to take, in this position, it's actually a little bit better for you to take the H6 pawn. Because after you have bishop to H6, you'd have the same thing with knight to H5. But unfortunately, more fortunately for you as white in this position, you do have queen to G4 because the problem is if the queen does take the bishop, you'll just take the rook and you've won an exchange. So, you know, queen would take, and then after H takes, you're hitting this knight. So it's a lot more even in this particular situation. But like I said, we do have bishop E3. And so now we have D4. And so you're starting to run into some problems here because, you know, you have, let's say, for example, you were to take here, you know, that would be, you know, really bad after E takes D. And then you see that you have the bishop, you know, on this queen. And then you also have the queen being attacked too. So after like the queen moves, you know, you're going to be winning the entire piece. So you definitely don't want that. So we see bishop coming back to D2. And so we see king to H8, not absolutely necessary, but just making sure that we sidestep any issues going on with bishop takes H6. And so we have A3. You know, Hikaru's just trying to stop the real dangerous expansion that Wesley So is doing here on the queen side. So we see bishop to A5, and so we see rook E to D1. So bishop to B6, so queen to F3. So rook to D6, preparing to double on the D file. And so we see queen to E2. Pawn takes C3, bishop takes C3, and we see rook A to D8. So as you can see, what Wesley So's been able to do is strap Hikaru with a backward pawn here on D3. And it's really hard, if not impossible, to try to push that. And so, you know, you have a very severe weakness now for white, and it's requiring a lot of babysitting. So you see that these heavy pieces here are pretty much babysitting this backward pawn. So that's what happens when you give somebody a backward pawn. You know, they're basically having to babysit it. So you have king to H1 and bishop to D4. And so rook to F1. And you have knight back to D7. And you have F4. And so you have E takes F4, rook takes F4, and you have knight to E5. Now, the unfortunate thing about the series of moves that we just saw is white has given black like the most perfect central square for their knight and just super made it an octopus. Because if we go back a couple of moves, you know, when Wesley So went knight to D7, he was probably trying to go here, but, you know, E5 is definitely a lot better than C5. So, you know, Hikaru just kind of gave him, you know, the most ideal placement for his knight. And then also, like we were talking about before, you know, this pawn is hit. And so it's just adding another attacker to that pawn. So we see rook to D1, so F6, and we see bishop back to B1. And if you guys want to stop the video real quick and see what Wesley So played, I think it's one of those moves that a lot of you guys are gonna find because it's just screaming to be played. So like I said, go ahead and stop it real quick and see if you can see how Wesley So is taking advantage of the pieces here. All right, cool. So a lot of you guys should have noticed that you know, the white pieces aren't very coordinated. This rook is undefended. This rook is only being defended by the queen. You know, like I said before, you know, we have this weak pawn on d3, and so yeah. So okay, so I'm actually one I'm actually one move too soon. Let me do this. So we got c5, and so we have rook to c1. Okay, now if you want to pause the video, yeah, I messed up. I did mess up. I was one move too soon. Go ahead and pause the video and see what Wesley So actually got. You know, how he took advantage of the weaknesses in black's position, or white's position, sorry. All right, cool. Yeah, so basically what I said a second ago is, you know, now the pieces are even more uncoordinated. So we have two undefended rooks here. We have the bishop that's undefended, the queen that's undefended. So the miscoordination of white's pieces, you know, begs for this move to come. You know, bishop takes c3. What it does is it removes a defender, and then it also just discovers the attack of all of these pieces bearing down on d3. And so we see rook takes d3, and we see c4. And as you can see, you know, it's just the position is just really horribly crumbling for white here. And so there really isn't a lot that you can do in this position to save this. It basically just would have to take a really horrible blunder by black. And so we see d takes c4, rook to d2, queen to h5. We see rook to d1 with check. And after king to h2, the rook is picking up that bishop on b1 for free. And then we see c takes b5, rook takes b2, and in this position, that Hikaru Nakamura actually resigns the game. If we just go back a touch, even after d takes c4, one of the things that was really important in this particular situation is to knock the queen away, because if you were to go rook to d1 directly, you can actually back up with the rook to f1 and defend that whole situation. So it was really important. It was a really nice technique when Wesley So went rook to d2 first, making sure that the queen was knocked away from defending f1, and then after that, now you pick the bishop up. So like I said, that was a really beautiful technique shown by Wesley So. He was the first person to you know, draw blood you know, in this particular situation. So it's a very exciting game, and like I said, everything's going on right now. So let's go to these chess puzzles real quick. And so this was the one that I had for you guys before, and it's a pinning tactic. And so, you know, coming up with rook to d4, you would know that after, you know, a pawn takes here, the bishop would take, you know, that's pinning the queen to the king. So you have to play something else. So knight takes g3 is kind of like a desperado move. And after knight takes g3, the rook would take g3, h takes g3, rook takes g3, and just sidestep with the king to f1. And after the, you know, after the rook takes, we'd see rook to g4, and the problem is the queen is pinned to the king, and you are prepared to deliver checkmate. Here, after the bishop covers, the rook would come back over, and that would be checkmate. So that is a pinning one. So congratulations if you got rook takes d4. That's a nice eye. And so we have this new puzzle here for you. And it is a pretty long one, but you know, I will give you the answer coming up probably in the next hour or two when I can get my next video down. I'm trying to go see if I can catch another win out of you know, either Hikaru or Wesley So. So I'll see you guys next time. Subscribe and like. I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I apologize for the one move error that I made a little bit early in the video. Hopefully you guys forgive me, but I'll see you guys next time. All right.